In the summer of 1977, in the quiet residential streets of Enfield in North London, an ordinary council house on Green Street became the center of one of the most disturbing and widely debated paranormal cases ever documented. From the outside, the house looked completely normal, just another modest brick home in a working-class neighborhood where families lived simple lives and kept to themselves. Nothing about it suggested anything unusual. Yet behind its doors, something began to unfold that would transform it into a symbol of mystery, fear, and controversy for decades to come. The Hodgson family lived in the house, struggling like many others in the area to make ends meet. At the heart of the family was Peggy Hodgson, a determined single mother raising 4 children on her own. Her daughters, 13-year-old Margaret and 11-year-old Janet, shared the home with their younger brothers Johnny and Billy. Life was not easy for them. Money was always tight, and Peggy worked tirelessly to maintain stability and provide her children with some sense of normal life despite constant pressure and hardship. Although the house itself was small and modest, it served as their refuge. It was the place where they ate together, slept, and tried to hold on to routine in the middle of uncertainty. For a while, it worked. The home, despite its imperfections, felt safe enough, but that sense of safety would not last. It began quietly, almost unnoticeably, one summer night. Strange knocking sounds echoed through the house. At first, Peggy assumed it was nothing more than plumbing issues or the house settling. But the noises continued. They grew more deliberate, more persistent, and harder to ignore. It felt as though something inside the walls was trying to communicate. Soon after, the disturbances escalated. Furniture began to move on its own. On one occasion, a heavy chest of drawers reportedly shifted across the floor without any physical explanation. Peggy pushed it back into place, only for it to move again shortly after, as though an unseen force was pushing against it. What had started as strange sounds had become physical events that defied any normal explanation. The children were the first to experience the full intensity of what was happening. Janet, in particular, seemed to be at the center of the activity. Objects moved more frequently around her than anywhere else in the house. Toys were thrown across rooms, and loud bangs echoed through the night. Sleep became nearly impossible. The household, once simply struggling, now lived in constant fear. As the days passed, the atmosphere inside the home grew heavier. The family began to feel as though they were not alone. There was an overwhelming sense of being watched, even when no one else was visible. Nights were the worst. The darkness seemed alive with sound knocking, banging, and sudden crashes that came without warning. Peggy tried to remain strong for her children, even as fear began to take hold. She did not want to believe that something supernatural was occurring, but she also could not deny what she was witnessing. In an attempt to find answers or reassurance, she invited neighbors into the home. To her shock and relief, they also witnessed the disturbances. Chairs tipped over without contact, objects moved unexpectedly, and knocking continued even in the presence of multiple witnesses. As word spread through the neighborhood, reactions became divided. Some people believed the family was genuinely experiencing something unexplainable. Others were skeptical, suggesting tricks, exaggeration, or stress-induced imagination. The Hodgsons, meanwhile, became increasingly isolated, caught between fear and public judgment. Over time, the disturbances intensified. Janet's behavior also changed. She appeared increasingly distressed and exhausted, as if something was affecting her directly. She often seemed distant, and at times, not fully aware of what was happening around her. The family struggled to understand the situation and eventually sought outside help. Paranormal investigators, including Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair of the Society for Psychical Research, were eventually called to the Enfield house. They approached the situation cautiously, considering all possible natural explanations such as structural faults, psychological stress, or even staged activity within the household. Upon arrival, they found a family under severe emotional strain. Peggy Hodgson was exhausted after months of unexplained disturbances, while the children were frightened and suffering from constant fear and lack of sleep.
And we was all just standing in the kitchen, all of us together. And then all of a sudden a pool of water come from nowhere in the middle of the floor in the kitchen. And then we heard the toilet chain pull. and there was no one at all out in the toilet. We was all in the kitchen. And the door opened in the toilet, then the chain went, and as we walked out there, the toilet brush came from the thing what it was in, the container, and the brush just come up and settled on top of the toilet.
The investigators carefully inspected the property, checking for issues in the plumbing, wiring, and structure, but found nothing that could account for the events. As their investigation continued, they began witnessing strange activity themselves. Objects reportedly moved without contact, chairs shifted position, curtains moved despite closed windows, and small items like toys and marbles were thrown across rooms. Everything was documented carefully due to the high level of skepticism surrounding the case.
The slipper was thrown across the room and hit the door as I was holding the door.
One of the most disturbing moments involved Janet Hodgson. During certain episodes, she appeared to enter an altered state in which a deep, unnatural voice spoke through her. The voice was harsh, far older in tone than her own, and introduced itself as a man named Bill. It claimed that it had once lived in the house and had died in a chair in the living room. This immediately unsettled everyone present. The voice continued to speak at times, sometimes answering questions directly, and other times responding in fragmented, eerie statements, as if fully aware of those around it. When questioned further, the voice gave details about its supposed past life. Some of these details appeared to match historical information later confirmed by neighbors, including the existence of an elderly man named Bill who had previously lived in the house and died while seated in the same chair. While not definitive proof of anything supernatural, it significantly deepened the mystery and made the case even harder to explain.
What about the voices? When did the voices start?
December the 12th.
December the 12th?
Yes.
And how did they start?
Well, one night Mr. Grove was talking about it about 8:30. He said, all we need now is the voices to talk. And that night...
Do you think there's anyone there just now?
Yeah, I do.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that, Janet?
Pardon? Stuart Certain.
The investigators documented everything they saw, aware that the case was becoming one of the most unusual they had ever encountered. Police officers, journalists, and neighbors also witnessed parts of the activity. Some remained skeptical, suggesting psychological explanations or deliberate deception. Others were left genuinely unsettled by what they experienced firsthand. The case quickly gained public attention, turning the Hodgson family's private struggle into a national topic of debate. Despite months of observation, no clear or universally accepted explanation emerged. For the Hodgson family, the experience left lasting emotional impact. Even after the disturbances gradually decreased, the memory of what they lived through remained deeply embedded. Life eventually returned to something closer to normal, but it was never quite the same. The sense of having shared their home with something unknown never fully disappeared. Whatever the truth may be, the events in that small house in Enfield continue to capture attention. They stand as a reminder of how fragile the boundary can be between the ordinary and the unknown, and how some stories, even decades later, refuse to fade into certainty or explanation.